We're very excited to introduce the next lecturer for the coming hour, Benjamin de Loenen. He is the founder and the executive director of the International Center for Ethnobotanical Education, Research and Service, the ICERS. And that organization is organizing at the moment the World Ayahuasca Conference. His documentary, the Ibogaine-Rite of Passage, is still a world reference on this subject to this day. His presentation today aims to provide a better understanding of the phenomenon of worldwide expansion of medicinal plants, the current political arena, and how as a community we can move towards social acceptance and a healthy integration of these ceremonial practices in our contemporary reality. Please join me in welcoming Benjamin de Loenen with The Inner Search for a Better World, Conscious Expanding Plants in the 21st Century.
Thank you. So I'm gonna do my best to not be boring because I just did a night shift. I work at Cosmic Air here right behind, so I haven't slept yet. But I'm sure I'm gonna go through, and I hope you have a good time listening to my presentation. For those who don't know what Cosmic Air is, it's just a service right behind here, and we are 24/7 available for people who have difficult experiences when they ingest a psychedelic or another substance, or sometimes without a substance, just the whole boom experience brings up, difficult matter. And so we are there to help them, to accompany them, and to be there for them to go through their process. No? So I encourage you, if you would, during this course of these days, have a situation or see somebody who's in need, to tell them to come to Cosmic Air. So I started this organization called ICERS. And today I just want to focus a little bit on the current state of plants, and above all ayahuasca, which has become very, very popular worldwide nowadays. And there's a lot of challenges we've been breaking our heads over on how we can push them into the right direction. So I'm going to start with a little real story. So about 30 years ago, there was a beautiful couple. They were totally in love, and at some point they made a baby. And this baby, she was called, let's call her Sarah. She got born, she went through the birth canal, she came into the beautiful world, and then she started to grow. No, she started to develop herself, but something was a bit wrong inside her. She felt she didn't have the space to completely develop herself, to achieve her maximum, potential. She felt that she was kind of holding space for something that wasn't there. And she got kind of frustrated, because we have dreams in our lives and we want to accomplish them, and she felt the inability to accomplish her dreams. So she started looking like, what's wrong with me? What can I do? What's the thing that's inhibiting me from really accomplishing my dreams? And so she was in a search for many years, and then when she reached her 19 years old, at some point something really horrifying happened, and she was raped. She was raped by a group of men, and from that moment her whole purpose in life just crashed. Her world exploded, literally, and she didn't know how to give meaning to life anymore. She got into a very, very deep depression, and she was totally stuck in, how can I live in a world where such horrible things are done to one another. And so looking for a way to kind of integrate that experience and move on with her life, she started to realize that the way to move on was really to start to do an inner search, that the thing she could change was herself, and changing the whole world, of course, is a very difficult thing to do. And she was very fortunate because at some point she heard about ayahuasca, and she met somebody, talked about this plant, and she decided to participate in a ceremony. That's when we met, and I saw her process unfolding. And so she drank ayahuasca 2 nights in a row, and it was an incredible experience. The first night she drank ayahuasca, she went to the birth canal, or to the womb actually. And it was surprising because it wasn't a very beautiful, bliss state, oceanic womb. It was a very toxic womb, and she smelled the smell of death next to her. And she realized some part of her was death, in the same space. And she was struggling, she was nauseated, she was throwing up, she was having a difficult experience. Until the moment she really found the force to say, there's this dead being with me here. I'm going to expel this dead being. This is my space now. I need this space to grow. She expelled the being. She inhaled, and she felt how the whole universe expanded. And for the first time in her life, she felt that space that she always had wanted and needed to develop. And so then she kind of started integrating that during the day a bit. Decided, even though it had been a very difficult experience, to repeat the next day. And in that experience, she went straight back to her big trauma, the rape. And so then she lived through it. It was horrible, but she could see and understand that she wasn't the fault. She always had felt guilty, thinking maybe I provoked this, no? And I was the person really responsible. And so also she went through it, and she kind of knew that she didn't have to allow that to destroy her whole life and move on and give meaning to it, no? And so that's what she did. And so the remarkable thing of the story is that afterwards she went home and she told her mother, said, "Look, you have to tell me the truth. Was I part of a twin where the other part died in the womb?" And the mother started crying. She said, "Yes. And I never wanted to tell you because I didn't want to hurt you." So that piece of information came out just in one ayahuasca session. No? She connected to perinatal memory. She went through it, and she then started doing psychotherapy and continued for about 6 months the psychotherapy process. And that's when we met again. And I saw a different person. No? She was shining in her eyes. She really integrated, and she understood, and she made a big change in her life. So for her, if you ask her what's ayahuasca for you, it's a medicine, no? It's a tool, it's a catalyst for change. And when you're stuck in life and you don't find purpose anymore, to her it connected her again with purpose, no? So it's very incredible, because then a few years later, the ayahuasquero in her country of origin in Europe, where she did the ceremony, was arrested. And he was not the only one. There were a lot of people that started to be arrested. And one of the cases we helped actively in Chile, we made a documentary about it, and I just want to show a very brief fragment on how this whole thing I just explained, on how that's seen by the prosecutor, no? How he understands the work with plants like ayahuasca from his point of view. It's in Spanish, but there are subtitles, so I hope you can all read, those who doesn't speak Spanish.
La acusación que presentó el Ministerio Público señala: hecho número 1. Los acusados César Rafael Ahumada Lira y Danae Dimitra Sáenz Racis se concertaron para ofrecer a un grupo numeroso de personas de nuestro país la ingesta de DMT, dimetiltriptamina, en una solución acuosa, obtenida de un extracto de la especie vegetal Ayahuasca, a fin de obtener efectos alucinógenos dentro de un autodenominado ritual de Ayahuasca, con pretendidas finalidades de sanación espiritual. Damos inicio a los alegatos de apertura. Se le concede la palabra al Ministerio Público.
Promueven, incitan y distribuyen en forma coordinada y sistemática cantidades relevantes y riesgosas para la salud de drogas ilícitas, psicoactivas, que además tienen propiedades alucinógenas y que por si fuera poco no tienen ningún tipo de intencionalidad altruista, sino que por el contrario lo realizan con un clarísimo fin de lucro, como ocurrió con los acusados. La dimetiltriptamina está prohibida en cuanto a su elaboración, distribución, uso y consumo. Es una sustancia tremendamente riesgosa si se ingiere. No posee uso terapéutico alguno conforme a la ciencia. No existen estudios recientes sobre ella para darle seguridad. E incluso podrán hablar de las bondades de esta pseudo denominada terapia. Esto confirma la tesis del Ministerio Público. Existe una baja percepción de los consumidores debido a su ignorancia y debido al aprovechamiento de los acusados de este discurso por la naturaleza.
So yeah, it's clear that there's a little different idea about what's really going on in these rituals, no? And yeah, I mean, this is a reality we are seeing in many places, in many countries, and you know, we have to. I mean, there's a clear problem here. There's total ignorance about what they have in front of them, and they feel this person is convinced that he's doing a good thing by putting people in jail. for working with these plants, no? And so ayahuasca is much more than a therapeutic tool, no? Of course, it comes from the Amazon, from centuries back. It's been a very important cultural practice for many, indigenous peoples around the globe. There's the churches that are also all expanded. So there's also this big cultural value here. And so I want to go for a moment to, cultural practice in general. Of course, we're human. We have all our culture, and that's what makes it beautiful, no? The cultural diversity we have. And some of these cultural practices, they are, local in one place, but they can be recognized worldwide as being really a value for the human race as a whole. And so I'm originally from Belgium, and then I went studying in Holland, and I ended up in Barcelona. And in one of these big feasts where I went, I saw this very peculiar, cultural practice that they had. And I'm gonna put a video meanwhile without sound. So these are human towers. So Catalans are great people, and they love to climb on top of each other. And to make this physiologically possible, you have the strong men in the back, and you have the little ones on top. So there's little kids climbing up 15 meters high. And so you wonder, how can it be that this is not illegal? No, it's clearly some danger involved. No, they're on top, but it's you see that there's certain experience, and they have they learned from this whole group experience. They go through a difficult or challenging experience altogether, and they have to rely on each other. And if you see it from the top, you have the piña, it's called, the structure, which is supporting the whole tower, no? And so also for the man in the below, his back probably will have maybe some complications in a few years, but he chooses to do that. For him this is clearly important. And this was recognized in 2010 by UNESCO as World Intangible Cultural Heritage. So it's a recognized worldwide cultural practice. You can see for the unity of the people, it's an important practice for them. And so when I saw that, I thought, does it ever go wrong? No, because this sometimes must collapse, this structure. And yes, it does. It does go wrong sometimes. So I just want to quickly show you how that looks like. So we have a little kid, about 15 meters high or more. Ooh. But here generally people don't get hurt because there's this base sustaining this tower, no? And in 2006 it really went wrong. There was a kid that died from brain injury, and so then of course the question comes: is the cultural value of this practice more important than the safety aspects of this practice? No, is it too dangerous for the cultural value it has or not? So then, there must have been a lot of discussion about that, and the question is, will we make this illegal, this practice? No, will we ban it or not? So probably there was somebody smart enough to think, well, if we would ban this, then probably, people would start illegal human tower collectives. They would get addicted to climbing on top of each other, and then their wife would find out they're part of one, and they would lose their family, and then their boss finds out, they lose their job, get into criminality. The Catalan jails become all full. So I thought, no, maybe that's not really the response. Maybe we have to do something else. Why don't we raise the minimum safety standards? Why don't we make it mandatory that the kids on top put on a helmet? So that's what they did, no? And so since 2006, no accident has happened, fatal accident. Sometimes a minor accident maybe happens, but all within the acceptable range, no? So the question is, how can it be that for such a practice, then they consider that maybe it's better to raise the safety standards, but when there's some issue, or some problem around the practice, which is not just taking a substance, it's not just about taking ayahuasca, it's about the whole worldview, about indigenous culture. There's the art, the indigenous art, no, and this is a Shipibo piece, but all the different cultures using ayahuasca or other plants, no, the peyote, and they all have their artwork. They all have ritual, no, and very ancient rituals passed on from generation to generation orally. For some, it's a sacrament. It connects them to the divine, So all of that is part of what we're talking about. We're talking about, music, sacred music that's used to guide people through their experiences. And there's these whole recipes of special plants boiled together with special properties, and then, you know, in the case of ayahuasca, for example, the bad luck is that one of these plants is this one. It's from the coffee family, and it contains one substance, which is DMT. And so all of a sudden, for this prosecutor, all he sees, he extracts literally the DMT out of these very, very rich cultural practices, you know, which have even is medicinal, therapeutic, and religious uses. And so here's a little graph. It's a bit of an estimation. We're working on really getting a very precise one on this. And you can see that I put between 1999 and 2009, you know, there were a few arrests. If I would have put 2008, this would have been much lower. So in 2009, there were several. And then you can see from then on to now that the arrests have increased very much, no? And one country that's quite responsible for this big hump in the middle is Spain. So Spain has a very long tradition of, you know, people using ayahuasca in churches contexts or indigenous contexts or more modern rituals. And at some point, arrests started to occur. There's more than 40 that occurred there. But it's something we're seeing now more and more. No, more countries are really actively prosecuting these practices. And then you have the INCB, the International Narcotics Control Board. So each country has their drug laws, and they base that on the conventions, different conventions that the states signed at some point. And so there's only, under these conventions, only 3 plants that are illegal, which is cannabis, opium poppy, and the coca plant. That was under the 1961 convention. And then on the 1971 convention, all the psychedelics are included. So LSD is there, MDMA, but also DMT, mescaline, all of the active principles that these plants contain are there. But so what the INCB itself, the UN, says is that no plant or concoction containing DMT is under international control. So they distinguish pure extracted DMT from the ayahuasca, no, as a plant preparation or a concoction. The same would count for the cacti, the peyote or San Pedro. They contain mescaline, but it's not an extract of mescaline. So therefore, according to international law, it's not illegal. But then it's a quasi-judicial body, so countries can interpret it. So that's where the court cases move towards. No? So is ayahuasca the same as DMT or not? That's where most of these court cases go. But one thing the INCB did is in 2010 and again in 2012, they recognized that ayahuasca and peyote and all these plants are not illegal. But they invite governments to make them illegal, and they create social alarm that it's all recreational, abusive, fake spiritual tourism. They all put in these ugly descriptions of this, new problem for public health, and they invite governments to make it illegal. That's in 2010, again in 2012, more or less in the same time when the arrests start to go up. And then you have this whole phenomenon of the new psychoactive substances, which are like the legal highs, the research chemicals, all these new substances where we don't really know anything about. There's no research. We don't know much about the long-term, mid-term, even sometimes short-term effects. And very often you see reports appear where they put ayahuasca, they put the cacti, all these plants all in the same sack. This is all new psychoactive substances. And so this whole effort, like a blank band-aid just started in the UK, where now everything that just alters your mood or your central nervous system is illegal, even though it's not classified or not regulated. So they are doing these efforts to stop this phenomena, and it's a direct result of prohibition, because if people wouldn't have to fear legal measures for the drugs that are available, then they wouldn't seek every time new ones that are not legal. But they just put all these plants and traditions all in the same sack, so that's something we're seeing as well. And of course, they're not, they're not new psychoactive substances. They're very old psychoactive substances with whole cultures around it. So this might all sound very depressing, but it's not. There's good news as well. There's never been so much science and research into this field. There's never been so much, communication and efforts from the community itself, the international community, to really push this into the right direction. So we have a lot at hand to really, move in the right way, And we have, from our foundation, we've been thinking, what can we do to really help that process, And we've come up with 3, big strategies that we're working on. And the first one is legal defense. So this is something that started organically. I made this film of the case in Chile. It was the first time we helped the case, and then some people started seeing it, and that's how things got rolling. And so for the last 6 years, we've accumulated a lot of expertise in this field. And so I just want to we just did a crowdfund campaign before the conference. We made a short 6-minute video which I want to show, where basically with the story about this effort and the project is explained.
At the time ICF was started in 2009, we never really thought we would get involved with legal defense. But then everything changed.
Un chamán que en noviembre de 2009 fue sorprendido realizando un ritual de ayahuasca en Fiji. La dimetiltriptamina está prohibida, se prohibía en Chile hace muchos años, está prohibida también en Estados Unidos, no tiene ningún uso terapéutico o médico conocido.
In the beginning of 2010, we got contacted by people in Chile who said that the police violently raided the ceremony.
En la prensa salió que éramos una secta, que drogábamos a las personas, que les robábamos la plata, el dinero.
Yo he visto en la tele que cuando encuentran a un traficante le dan como 50 años de cárcel y yo no quiero eso para mi papá.
From the moment we got contacted by the defendants, we decided to help in any way we could. We didn't know much at the time, but we managed to align the technical and scientific knowledge with the legal knowledge of the lawyers and work towards what would become a very significant and positive outcome. And that's when more and more people started to contact us in the same situation, also in need of our legal support.
Nos contactan personas que han integrado la ayahuasca en su forma de vida y que han recibido educación en tradiciones indígenas o en otras tradiciones que de repente se han topado con el sistema de justicia, se han topado con una ley que no está clara y están muy asustadas y están muy necesitadas de orientación y de apoyo.
In recent times, a wave of arrests and prosecution of ayahuasca practitioners have occurred, while international and national drug control bodies and health authorities have spread concern about the validity and safety of plants like ayahuasca, proposing repressive measures without understanding the benefits of their properly guided, responsible utilization.
Indigenous people across the world have benefited from teacher plants for many, many centuries. As interest in those plants is now migrating north for medical, self-discovery, for religious purposes, we need to be thoughtful how we respond in terms of public policy. What is clear is that punishing people who use those plants or who make them available is not the way to go. It is compassion, education, and evidence that should be at the core of public policy response.
We started to see an incredible value in taking the experience from one legal case and then facilitating it to the lawyers and the defendants in another country. Legal defense organically became a very prominent activity in our foundation over the last 5-6 years. So much that we decided we had to professionalize. We could take it to another level.
In 2014, we took it a step further by organizing the World Ayahuasca Conference, where we established an expert committee, centralizing a vast body of legal expertise and resources. Imagine we could build a robust legal support network together as the whole community, so that each victim of repressive law enforcement could count on the solidarity of the rest of the community, with the right support to turn fear back into freedom and create positive legal precedents for future cases. Together we can build that support network.
Ante la situación actual, lo que consideramos necesario es crear un fondo sólido, estable, fuerte, para ser capaces de afrontar el apoyo a los casos concretos y además, allá donde se presente una oportunidad, ser capaces de incidir hacia unas políticas más sensibles con las prácticas que rodean la ayahuasca.
A strong network of legal experts that provide support to individuals is crucially important in this process, and not only because it will assist those individuals, but also because evidence gathered in the process will be useful for public policy.
It's an area that requires a lot of education. It's an area that requires a lot of sensibility, and an area that I think requires a lot of expert advice. And so that's what we hope to provide through the fund, is an ability to give reliable information to people so that they can have the information to consider in making the choices that they wish to make, and also to be able to work together to try to create public policy collectively, globally, as well as in different countries that can be more humane, more respectful of human rights, and to provide service to the well-being.
Over the last years, we have come a long way. We've united brilliant minds in the field of legal defense of ayahuasca. We've defined the strategy and the functioning of the funds, the criteria, and the support protocols. We've done the branding, the website. Everything really has come to a place where now we really need to involve into the international community.
Now we invite you to contribute to a legal defense fund so that together we protect and defend ethical and responsible practices involving the utilization of ayahuasca and other ethnobotanicals. Imagine what we can do together to defend each other in solidarity and, as a community, build a future in which these valuable ethnobotanicals can be made available legally and responsibly.
I think it's really crucial that ayahuasca continues to be integrated into Western culture, and the Ayahuasca Defense Fund is one of the most important tools that we have to coordinate internationally to bring about the transition that we as a species so desperately need. I'd encourage you to support their efforts as much as you can in any ways that you can.
We need other partners, and so if you feel that you have something to give in terms of connection or material resources so that we could really build this fund and be of greater service, the stronger we are, the more we can accomplish.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you. So this campaign we launched about 2 months ago, and we managed to get many people around it. There was a lot of promotion, and we managed to get more than $80,000 together, which really gives us a good stable basis to really operate. And at current we're helping about 9 cases worldwide in different countries, in Israel, Canada, and in different European countries. And we're seeing good successes as well. There was just a victory in a Spanish case we were involved that was defended based on shared use. So a group of people, one was busted with 30 liters, I think 30 or 20 liters of ayahuasca, and then it was defended with the fact that it was a group of people that really imported it for their shared use. And that was one of the examples where the judge really concluded that ayahuasca is not illegal, that it's maybe better instead of criminalizing it to really come up with more regulatory ideas, where they also recognized it had been beneficial for the participants and really opened the way for really advance this work in. This was a case in Spain. No? So we're seeing results, and it's amazing to see also how within this campaign people came together around this. And I would invite you to visit the website defendayahuasca.org. The link below is of the crowdfunder, which is still open, but we closed the active promotion campaign. And also we've got involved in several openings in governmental level, where, for example, in Australia they just proposed to a rescheduled DMT to Schedule 9, which would allow the use of ayahuasca for religious purposes. And they opened the possibility for civil society to send in reports, and so we wrote the technical report. We send it in with some recommendations. So there's openings, no? And it's important that we are all very well organized to take those chances and really push things into the right direction. The other thing which we've been focusing on is the idea of regulatory pathways. Now, where are we going? What's really what we want to achieve? And there's different options to bring these plants, make them available for those who can benefit from them. And so to know where you want to go, where you're going, you first have to imagine where do we want to go, no? And the place where I think we should go is a world in which responsible practices involving consciousness expanding tools, ayahuasca, peyote, or other plants or psychedelics, are legally protected and supported in the best possible way, no? First of all, I think everybody should have the right to to put in their own body whatever they choose to use, and I think it's a big, violation against human rights to put people in jail for that. And when we're talking about really people offering services and offering ayahuasca ceremonies and claiming they are going to help you with certain problems, I think it's important that we create contexts that really support that work very well, no? Because as we know, there's problems as well, there's challenges, there's opportunism, there's people doing irresponsible work or unethical work, no? So So we need some kind of well-supported system where people are properly informed, where they really know what they're going to do, what they can get, and if they have difficult experiences, that they also find support and the right resources to deal with that. And so there's different regulatory paths. One way where several organizations like MAPS and Hefter and Beckley and others are working on is the medical model, no? Where you really develop, you say, so let's try to develop, say, MDMA or say psilocybin or a substance as a medical tool, as a medicine, and that's for specific problems. So, for example, for PTSD, you can then at some point, do a therapy session with MDMA. And it takes, phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trials. Generally, it's an expensive process, but in the way the science helps changing, of course, the public opinion. It's important. It shows that there's important potential in there. And I think we're not so far away from things like psilocybin, for example, becoming a medicine, which at first can only be used for a specific issue, and then maybe it can be used off-label and it can expand. That's one way to go. The other way is the religious freedom, where several groups in the world have had successes as well, like the UDV achieved years ago in the US legal status and a permit from the DEA to get that. Also in Holland, for example, it's protected. And now we've seen an interesting thing in the US where there was this hype of churches that would associate with the Native American church, and the Native American church, the ONAC were called, they were kind of granting a type of legal protection if they would become a member, which really we looked at it, it wasn't a legal protection, it was more of a scam. And so churches would pay money, they would become a member, think they were legally protected, and so we were expecting the worst, thinking that some of these churches would really get busted very hard. And now what just recently happened, right a few days before the Boom Festival, is that one of these churches got a letter from the DEA, and they said basically, we know what you're doing, we checked out your website, you're selling a Schedule I substance, different ones, you're claiming it's legal, it's not legal. Please stop your actions, and we invite you to apply for religious exemption, for religious freedom. And we published on our website guidelines to do so. That's the DEA. So, I don't know where that's going to lead, but maybe more churches are going to get that possibility of really, within their religious practice, get access, legal access and protection of their sacrament. But of course, also that protects a number of groups that are working with ayahuasca, but not all the users would fall or would be accepted within that context. So what we did is we have our office in Barcelona, and we have a very peculiar situation there where all of a sudden the Cannabis Social Club model arose years ago. So all of a sudden some people, like in Spain from the heroin epidemic, there was this court case, and they recognized this concept called shared use, where, for example, one addict can go off, he can buy 50 grams of heroin, one for himself, one for the friend, one for the other friend, and it's a collective purchase. So when the police would arrest him, he wouldn't be considered a dealer, he would be considered a collective purchase, and it's personal use, and personal use is not criminal in Spain like it is here in Portugal as well. And so some people connected the dots and let's say, well, why don't we rent the private space? We cultivate some marijuana plants, and then we are all users, and we share the crops, and we become a private non-profit user association of cannabis. So people started to do that. All of a sudden now there's about 250 in Catalonia alone. There's maybe 1,000 in Spain. And so then the politicians said, oh, we have to do something because this is now reality. So it's a bit of a legal struggle. Cannabis, of course, illegal as a plant. So there's the courts on provincial level all won. Now there's a few that went to the Supreme Court. It's a bit of a struggle. But what I think is that this model is very interesting because what it upholds is that it's private. So private means that only people that know each other or new friends of people that are already member can become a member. So it's a closed group. You don't go advertising on the street, hey, you want to take ayahuasca, here, I'll give it to you. No, it's more of a closed environment. It's non-profit, so there's not this competition between whether money is more important than the health of the participants. It's very clear. There's no money being made with this. There's money involved because people can have salaries, they can work within the association, but it's a different way of organizing, And then also there's certain sets of rules, And so what we're working on is really studying this model very much. We've been very involved as well politically in this cannabis social club model, and see how can we learn from that and maybe adapt that model to the use of plants, ceremonial uses of the sacred plants, where the shamanic model would fit in, the religious model, or other, more modern time ceremonies or medical uses. All of that could fit in to the same association. But what is really important is that it would be defined as being very ethically very correct, that there would be minimum safety standards like the helmet, with the human towers, where you also create the same base, that the human towers have below, to make sure that the participants in the ceremonies can have proper integration, are properly informed, and all that. So that's something we are working on now, and really looking really in the juridical and the political environments to push that forward and look at that possibility as a regulatory pathway. So that's the second thing we're working on. And then the last thing is something important. I mean, it has to do with what I show. We have a very important cultural treasure here. It involves so much. There's so many tribes. It's traveling all around the world. There's cultural interchange. Now people are doing ayahuasca ceremonies and they're doing meditation, or they're taking wisdoms from other cultures and they bring them together. So we're all learning from each other. And it's a cultural treasure. And within that process, we have to cherish that and we have to protect that. So one thing we did, we organized the first World Ayahuasca Conference in 2014, and I don't know how the idea occurred. We applied for auspices from UNESCO, and we got it. So UNESCO, for the first time, they put their logo. They, institutionally, granted their logo to a conference that was focused on the challenges of the globalization of ayahuasca. And so the conference was an enormous experience. We had 650 people from about 60 countries that came all together. And it was in Ibiza in Spain, and we had this thing. So after a while we started thinking, wow, but this is maybe a very important line to follow, because ayahuasca and peyote and the other plants are more and more like got into the drug control system and understood as a new psychoactive drug and a new problem to public health. So why don't we potentiate the cultural aspect? So let's potentiate the fact that these are recognized cultural practices, and that will automatically kind of push and pressure the drug control system. So that's something we have been working on, and that led us eventually, even though after this conference we said, never again such a conference, at the end now we're organizing the second one in Brazil, so that's the next meeting now in October we're doing. And we managed to really bring together 80 shamans from different ethnic groups in Brazil and abroad. The ayahuasca churches, with 200 international speakers. We're now inviting people from UNESCO, from the cultural ministries and officials, to really sit them all together and say, look, it doesn't make any sense that the Mediterranean kitchen is a internationally recognized cultural practice, and traditional ayahuasca practices are not. Let's change that now, and let's work together to get that done. And there's a whole procedure in the way it works. But we need to get these people around the table and really establish a bit of a work plan on how to push that forward in the next years. And imagine when new court cases would come up and people would arrive in front of the judge and then say, well, but this is a world recognized cultural practice. Of course, that kind of, from the starting point puts things a bit in a different space, in a better space to defend. So that's the other line of work we're doing. And I would invite you also to check out the website, ayaconference.com. It's a 6-day conference that's now happening in the second part of October. So, a little bit to wrap up, and then I want to go to the questions. Like we see here in Cosmic Air, people come sometimes in a very bad state, and you think like, you're with them, and their challenge, well, when properly handled, becomes an opportunity for growth, And I feel that that's where we are right now with these, sacred plants from the traditions. They're globalizing, they're spreading. And they're spreading with a lot of challenges that go with it, but we have an opportunity at hand to really, change that challenge into something, a growth and a healthy integration of different cultures and different practices within the modern world now, which we so much need. So yeah, I would to close, invite everybody to really, join forces and collaborate on efforts and really try to show that as an international community we are responsible. We can really handle, these practices and advance them, no, and show that, and hopefully, show to the governments it's not needed to criminalize, but that they can basically just offer the space for these plans to be used, constructively. And so, and really make sure that everybody who could benefit from the inner search, and really trying to make this world a better place, to have access to them, and they're being granted the human right to use these plants in the best way possible. So that's what I want to say to start, and then I would say we go to questions. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. That was a fantastic talk. I've been working with ayahuasca for a number of years now in the UK and in Peru, and watching this journey unfold. And I feel like one of the most damaging things for the recognition of ayahuasca as a medicine is the situation in Peru, where most of the retreat centers are operating, in my view, as money-making centers. They're having 40 people on a 10-day retreat, each of them paying $2,500. And you can understand any authorities or members of the public looking at this and saying, this is a money-making machine, this isn't about medicine. It's very understandable. Do you feel there's anything that can be done about this situation?
Well, that's a very good question. And of course, I think everybody in the community has, broken their head over that question. And there's been initiatives. There's also been, and it's not, I don't think it's just Peru. And in Peru, there's very good centers. There's very problematic centers, like everywhere in the world. There's problematic practitioners. There's people doing sexual abuses, but also that happens with, sometimes therapists or in, those contexts. But here you're working with very powerful plants that already have stigma around them. And when things happen, of course, it really damages the credibility of the fact that there's something important in them. So I totally agree with that. One thing what we have been doing for the last 6 years or so is really trying to educate the public, because when people really are properly informed, they can know how to distinguish opportunism and money-making machines that don't care at all about your medical history or your well-being. Asking the right questions, studying the text that the people put on their websites, calling them. There's many ways to really find out who you have on the other side, And so, on one hand, that's very important, that people are better informed and that they cannot fall prey to, opportunism and people. Of course, a lot of people coming to that are desperate. They have problems. They've tried everything. Nothing works. With Iboga as well as addiction treatment. People have, 20 years of abuse. They went to, many rehabs, and then they find Ibogaine. They're desperate. So it's very easy to trick them. And so when they're properly informed, I think it's, it becomes much better, because opportunism will have a less strong hold on, and they will fade away eventually. But that's not enough. There will always be, when you are a smart marketeer, you're always going to have people that come. So in a way, one thing we did, for example, with the Ayahuasca Defense Fund was define like support criteria. Things we saw that people do wrong or do very problematically. And if you think about working in an unsure legal context, and you're doing ayahuasca ceremonies, and something happens, the police comes and they bust you. It's very difficult to defend somebody who has, there's clear signs of sexual abuse. He would tell everybody he cures your cancer in one day. You go away after one night, everything's solved. If you have that type of person, it's very difficult to defend, because really there's malpractice. He's not informing honestly the people who come. But when people really operate in the best possible way, they're very responsible. They have enough training. Aside of their maybe shamanic training or whatever training they have, they also have like CPR or other things that show responsibility, where they have screening. They don't allow everybody. When there's that type of context that comes in front of law enforcement, it's much more easy to defend. So through the Defense Fund, in a way, we kind of put in a filter where we want to potentiate and stimulate responsible use, And I personally don't think there's something wrong with charging people money for a service, but it needs to be very clear what that service is, what you're offering, what your capabilities is, what's your team, when people arrive, that they really get what you are saying you're going to offer them, and when people are really, when there's a fair trade, no? So I think so it's not a money thing. It's about manipulation, about opportunism, and really setting up these very big business models. It's like an elephant coming to a porcelain shop, no? And you start making a lot of noise, and that's when governments say, well, this is yet another big business, let's make it illegal. So, but I think, again, as an international community, as we, talk more and have more interaction, and we try to, push things to the right direction. And there's examples from the past where, part of the community reacted to some of this very problematic behavior. So I think that's happening more and more, and even now in Iquitos there's an initiative that tries to bring centers together, dialogue with authorities, and really talk about things like safety, ethics, and all that. No, so I think there's a problem, and there's malpractice going on, and businesses appearing, but there's also initiatives trying to push that in the right direction. So these are three strategies I now point out. We work in more fields than other people, and organizations work in more fields, and I think all of that together is what we need to push it forward.
How dangerous is the upcoming from Changa and smoke-able DMT, which has not cultural base background, and for your court as Ayahuasca Foundation?
So you mean the danger for the people using it, or for the global?
When it's coming to a court, and people get busted or turn mad, and which has,
I mean, what I said in the beginning, there's a clear distinction from the international policy between, the extracts, the DMT, pure DMT, for example, in ayahuasca. That doesn't mean that there's not a lot of people who can have really beneficial experience in utilizing DMT also in a responsible way. So I'm not saying I'm against substances, and saying that people should have the right to use whatever they want to use, but that they should have access to information, to risk reduction, information harm reduction, etc. I think really in a way it are like two different things. No, like when now the attention is very much focused on groups organizing and offering ceremonies and saying it heals people, or it's therapy and all that. So the focus there is very much on ayahuasca, and in a way distinguishes it. Potentially is very much this idea that it's a very different thing than DMT. From a pharmacological point of view, it's different drinking ayahuasca than DMT. The whole behavior around it is different. The unique thing I think about ayahuasca is that, unlike any other thing, it traveled around the world in a ceremonial context. Maybe not always the traditional one. Maybe they change. But a lot of if you ask people how should you use ayahuasca, most of people will say, well, in a ceremony, whether it's with a shaman or with a priest or whatever it is. No, so it's not like mushrooms, for example. They come from traditions as well, where they're used ceremonially, but they traveled more as a product, no, as a psychedelic. They ended up in smart shops. People use them outside of ceremonial context. So it's interesting, focusing on ayahuasca, because you're really focusing on much more than just a substance and a whole context. But I think, the uses of Changa or DMT are generally in other contexts, and I don't know if they don't, I think, get so much international attention than now. Ayahuasca is growing very much. It's all over the place. It's in Hollywood now. People have jumped on it. They take it. It's everywhere. So it's all in the picture. Mainstream media is covering it. So that's really. It's very much focused just on that thing, and it's natural. People feel attracted to natural products, in alternative therapy. So I think in terms of policy moving forward, these are two different subjects, really.
On the court or in front of the judge, they can see it as the same, and
For sure, they can see it as the same. That's where,
So that was my question: how dangerous is it for you, the massively upcoming interest, and there will be cases, in the future, and so the interaction with this, that they combine it, just say, it's the same, and
But now, our experience now in court with the ayahuasca cases is really that, if you build a defense properly, you can really convey, very well, like I tried to do in this presentation, that what we're talking about here is a very peculiar thing. It's a very complex thing. It involves cultural background, human rights issues, the religious freedom aspect, many, many things that all come together in this one case. So that's what makes these ayahuasca or, San Pedro. We are now also helping 2 San Pedro cases and a mambe, coca leaf, traditional coca leaf case. So maybe when if DMT would be all over the place and become in the media very much present, then we would see this very, change maybe with effect. For the moment, I can say that, things are going in the right direction, and with the work we're doing, we're seeing good outcomes, generally.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to bring up that in Barcelona, there is the first ayahuasca association about shared use. It's called La Maloca, and it's been approved lately by the Catalonian government. So yeah, just for you to know. Thank you.
Yes, there's a few actually. Now there's 2 or 3. So this is really a natural step, and this La Maloca, the association has done really incredible work in showing their face and really being out there at the front lines and pushing that model forward. No, so I think as I said in this second part, this model of really having users come together and getting self-organized in an association context is very important.
Hello. Thanks for your amazing speech. I wanted to ask you some words about the law of compassion, how it can be used also to help this treatment move forward. In Switzerland, we just started to use it to ask the Swiss government for Iboga treatment. We will see about the answer. But I was wondering what is happening in the whole world, how this law can help also.
It's a difficult question because it's about compassionate use, no? So where for example, with types of cancer where there's no efficient treatment, you can then get an exemption for something not approved to be used, no? And it's difficult. With ayahuasca, for example, it's very difficult because the science really, has no clear proofs of what it really helps. I mean, there's some science showing it helps people with addiction, with, some other conditions, but there's not enough science to really say this really works for something where we don't have another option, approved option for. With Iboga, it depends. It's also difficult because in addiction they see, with opiate addiction, they see, but we have methadone, no? We have substitution, so there is a cure. But of course, there is no cure, and there will never be a cure for addiction because I don't think it's a disease. But it's difficult because in the head of many people there are effective options, but then addiction continues and becomes worse and all that. So asking for them to allow, in their eyes, a maybe dangerous hallucinogenic substance, there needs to be more science, no? And I think that's where science comes in and is very important. With Iboga, there's more scientific evidence about clear, potential or beneficial effect on addiction. It blocks opiate withdrawal. It stops craving, all of that is demonstrated in animals, in humans, and so forth. So as I would see with Ibogaine, and there's other, now Ibogaine was just approved as a prescription medication in South Africa and Brazil as well. It is used under the compassionate use. So there's option, but I think more for Iboga in addiction.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. I loved it. I'm from San Francisco, and I just wanted to ask if you on your website, if you have any information on what ayahuasca ceremony locations are acceptable and doing right practices, because in San Francisco right now there's a big boom of DMT going all the way to Las Vegas, going all the way to Los Angeles, and I am part of that, not of the distribution, but I'm part of the psychedelic family that we have in San Francisco, and so we try to talk to each other and see who can help each other out, as in, because we invite friends to come over and go to the mountain and take psychedelics. We're not shaman, but we try to help people just like you do in your center that you have. But I'm trying to find out more information on how we can be trained to help people, because there is such a big boom in San Francisco that people, I see it often at the club or anywhere we go, people are taking it like if it be anything, like MDMA, oh, I'm gonna take it, and not knowing what it can really do to help.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. really how to answer your question. I mean, you know, I think that is to do mostly with education. No, if people should know what they're taking and what the effects are, what it can do, where it comes from. You know, if there's traditional uses, all of that. So on one hand, I mean, you know, if you don't want to, I mean, people should have the right to take things the way they want to do, no? But it's important that they have information about what it is and how to use it responsibly in a constructive way. So that on one hand. On the other one, if I understand well, your question is about if there's a place on our website or other places where you can see more like the ceremonies that are taking place and which ones are more responsible than others.
Yes.
So we don't have that information on our website, and actually we don't give, you know, that type of information because it's first of all very difficult to really know how people work. No, if you don't know them for a while, if you haven't been in some ceremonies, you don't really know it from up close. It's very difficult to say go there. First of all, there could be a legal implication because the legal standard is different in different countries. But what we do is we inform people on our website. If you go to iseers.org, you can find information for people who want to try, you know, ayahuasca, iboga for their family members to explain why people do this, and you know what can you do when your loved one comes home from a ceremony, maybe is in a very, you know, confused state or is a difficulty integrating. How can you be of help? All of that information we have on our website. No, so that's on one side. And then there's a few websites now, like Open Mind Trips is one. There's forget now the name. There was Aya TripAdvisor, but I don't think it exists anymore. These are these websites that list ceremonies, and then the community can rate. No, it's a resource. You can check it out. I would encourage to do that. But you have to be very careful because it's very easy for me. I run a center, and then I call all my, 100 people. I say, can you please rate 5 and say this was an amazing experience? They all do that, and then everybody believes it's an amazing place. No, so until what level is it reliable? I know there's now an initiative in the Netherlands, Ayamundo, I think it's called, and they try to create more community, so more of a forum where people really can connect with each other. And yes, I went there, and it was like this. So it's not just a rating in a message. It's important if you have a place you want to go to ask around, to look on forums, Facebook, everything you can try to really understand what's really going around there. If it's a responsible place, if people are well trained, if they offer what they're saying they're offering. Yeah, so there's not one place. I would suggest you.
The purpose was just because people do come to me and my friends to ask for. Because they see us be more spiritual than others, and they're like, "Oh, you should know." And I want to make sure me and my family that we are giving the right information and leading people towards healing instead of just, "Oh, I want to go get high for a couple seconds." You know?
But there, I think what best you do is give them read this text, read that document, really do your research. That's point one. Do your research. It's not because it's a new trend or people really are saying, oh, this helped me so much that it will help you. And actually we have a support service as well, which I think is important to mention as well. So people contact us on a daily basis with questions. They say, I want to drink or take iboga, I have an addiction, I have this disease and I take that medication. Is there a contraindication? So we don't tell people, yes, you can do it or no. We say, this is what the science shows. This is, if you would take it, you would probably be a living experiment because there's nothing. So we try to really inform people as much as we can. No? So, but then additionally, we get people who have taken ayahuasca or iboga or other plants, and they have very challenging experiences. And sometimes they really are re-traumatized if they had a trauma before, or they have a profound experience that really starts to disassociate them, and they really are in a crisis. No. A psychological crisis, and they contact us as well. So we provide them, sometimes a few Skype sessions, or we try to help them to really overcome that crisis and find, if they need long-term help, to find that and help that. No, so it's really about and a lot of these people who come to us, they were not properly informed. They went to drink somewhere. A friend said, "Oh, go there." When there was amazing, they go. They get no information. They maybe had a big trauma, like the case I was saying in the beginning of my talk, no? And they go there, all of a sudden you go through a rape again. I mean, that can be so harsh that you can start disassociating psychological problems. And if the people there are not trained or they don't have a trained staff that can then help you really integrate and give it a constructive turn, then it can be damaging as well. I mean, these are very powerful tools, no? It's not play good, so So people really have to know that there's benefits, that there's risks, and how to minimize risks, how to maximize benefits, how to take responsible decisions. That's what it's all about for me.
Just a little distinction in answer to a couple of questions here about chemically extracted DMT as something distinct from ayahuasca. Well, in Australia, there are actually arrests, people, there are DMT task force with the police and that sort of thing. And there are arrests, but for ayahuasca, it's not happening. So there is a distinction there. There's also a distinction that's made by the traditional owners of the acacias, which is where a lot of the DMT and changa comes from. And generally speaking, the elders of the Aboriginal people are cool with ceremonial, sacred healing uses of DMT, but not with the recreational thing. So basically, if people are here have some DMT or some changa, then it's really important to treat it more like an ayahuasca ceremony and less like popping a tab of acid. Yeah, because it is something that's really powerfully healing and so sacred to the most ancient people of this whole world, the Aboriginal people. So just remember that. Thanks.
Thank you very much.